Today, we're going to be talking about trying new things. And this isn't just about trying new things here in, you know, my sewing world and So Lounge, but I want you to be trying new things too, because that is the whole point of, you know, sewing, right? It's about trying new things, facing your fear of cutting that fabric that you absolutely love and worrying that somehow you're going to mess it up. It's also like, that fear of perfection that, you really, really want to get it right, but maybe this is something you haven't sewn before, like, buttonholes or putting in an invisible zipper for the first time or setting the perfect sleeve. All of these things get better the more you try and the more you practice. So that is going to be the topic of today's discussion here on the live stream. Leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to know where everybody is. And if things look a little bit different, it's because I accidentally fried my laptop over Christmas break and with a glass of wine. So it sounds a lot more exciting than it actually was. I was decorating my little Christmas tree that was on top of the desk next to my computer, and I had put down my glass of wine. And as I was decorating the tree, I knocked it over. So I am on an iPad, so it looks a little bit different, but it's still going to be the same fun hangout that you have come to love and be part of. So do let me know where you are. Trisha said to make sure you turn the messages on to all messages, so you can see. I'm going to be seeing all the messages in, here on the side. So if I look away, that's what I'm looking at. And, Lady Angel Heart is watching. And so is Denise from Marietta, Ohio. Hey, Denise, thanks for joining us. And I'm still working this all out as usual. So here's the thing. I'm not just going to be trying new things here in the studio. I'm also going to be trying new things with So Lounge in general. I wanted to let you know, if you are in the Houston or the general Texas area and you would like to join me this coming Saturday, January 24th, I am doing a Louvre Couture Mood Fabrics event. It's going to be hosted here in Houston by So Lounge. There is a link in the description below this video if you want to check that out. It is going to be a fabulous day of couture fashion that is dispersed throughout the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, and the various costumes or the designs are put into the areas of art that inspired the designs in the first place. And it's going to be a fun discussion of, couture fashion, the fabulous fabrics that are shown in the displays, and a little bit of art history sprinkled in. These are all things that I love, and I really want to share that with you. So if you're nearby and you want to come here next weekend, be sure to click the link in the description and check that out. Tickets are on sale until tomorrow. I have to kind of cut it off because I have to let the museum know by Monday how many people are coming and, if we met the quota for the group rate. So it is limited to 12 people. If you're interested, be sure to check that out. And that's where we are. So I see a bunch of you have popped into the chat. So we've got Amanda in Atlanta, Mary Flynn in Lafayette. Hello, Mary Flynn. I hope you go shop at A&A Fabrics over in Broussard because it's fabulous, and you're so close. Vanessa is in New York. It is not snowing here in Houston, but it is cold. So Ellen, thanks for joining in from Maryland. Christy, Lady Angel Heart, it's so nice to know your name. Christy, Wisconsin, welcome everybody. We got Patience in San Francisco, Patricia in Virginia, Randy in Phoenix. Ann in Raleigh, North Carolina, Susan in Glendale, Kim in Chicago. Kim, I'm sure it's very cold up there. I visited my sister when she lived up there for a year, and it was probably the coldest I've ever been in for Thanksgiving, and it was not too cold to snow though, so not super cold. Chris is in South Carolina. Emily's in Lancaster. Rita is in North Carolina. Karen's in Rhode Island. Makey, I'm so glad that you're watching. I hope you're feeling better. You know, and I'm so glad that you're here joining us from so far away. I know it's evening over there. Carla is in California. Um, Chris had chickens lay eggs. That's awesome. So happy. Fresh eggs are the best. We do not have chickens, but we have some friends in West Texas who have chickens, and sometimes they give us eggs, and it's really awesome. So, my cousin Cheryl, hello, Shabu. I'm glad you're watching. Um, oh, Mary, you do go to A&A. That's awesome. Yeah, they've got gorgeous fabrics. We've got Madison, Polly in Missouri. Uh, Nancy in Ohio, 31 degrees. Yeah, it's pretty chilly here today in Houston, but we're making it work. The sun did just come out, so that is the bonus. When I lived in Ohio, it was always a cloudy winter, which is harder to deal with. And I don't know what the blue. I have anti-glare on these, and something funky is happening. So I can see you guys. I can get the um um. So this is let's get started. It is going to be a fun chat. At this time of year, you've probably been getting a lot of emails from, any type of sewing or self-improvement blog or channel that you follow and get their emails from. And everybody's all like, New Year's resolutions, like how to do it, like how to make them stick, because I think they say by January 15th, most people have, you know, are done with them, And so this year I decided to try something a little different. So if you're on my email list, you probably got my anti-resolution email towards the end of last year, beginning of this year, which was basically, I'm not going to pretend like I'm not going to buy fabric this year, because every year, and you can go back and watch this, I say I'm not going to buy any more fabric. I'm just going to sew from my stash. And I think we all know that that is extremely hard to do, especially if either maybe your stash is for the life you want and not the life you have, or maybe, some of the fabrics in your stash are, things you used to love, but you don't really love them anymore. And, things like that. So also, sometimes you're sewing something and you need a different fabric that is not in your stash. So I tend to buy a lot of beautiful, um, light to medium weight cotton fabrics. I have a lot of lawn. I have a lot of broadcloth. I have, you know, a bunch of different knits. And sometimes I don't, want to sew those things. Sometimes I need to find something else. So I decided I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to do that, because inevitably something happens. And, in various years, like in 2023, when I said that at the beginning of the year, I ended up traveling to London and Madrid and going fabric shopping. And then, in 2024, High Fashion Fabrics closed here in Houston, and all of their fabric went on sale because they were total, clearing everything out. And so I ended up buying a lot of fabric then. And then last year, Joann's closed, and I ended up buying a bunch of fabric that was super, super discounted because it was on clearance. So, and then anytime I go to Louisiana, I have to stop at A&A and Broussard because they have gorgeous dead stock fabrics, and I inevitably end up buying fabric there. So why try? It's just not going to work. So, why set yourself up for failure if you know you're going to buy the fabric? And now Mood Fabrics has opened here in Houston, and it is on my way home from work, to and from work every day. Like it's very centrally located to where I live. And, I'm not going to pretend. I'm going to eventually get over there and buy something more substantial than what I have already purchased last year. So, um, as far as that goes, we're not doing that this year. But I thought instead, let's try something a little bit different. Like, I'm going to try something different. I'm inviting you to try something different with me. This was the topic of the video last week of, you know, trying new things and things that maybe seem scary or things you've always wanted to try but haven't ever gotten around to it because it's more time consuming than maybe you want to spend on a project. I know that sometimes I just want to sit down and sew something, and I need to keep it in my head that when I do that, like I have this really great knit dress pattern from Simplicity that I love. I think I've made it in 4 different fabrics and 4 different variations because you can change the neckline, you can change the sleeve length, you can change the skirt length. So it's a lot of variety. And I think when I just want to sew something fast, I just need to say like, okay, I'm just going to sew another one of those dresses because I love them. They're fantastic. It's a great fit and a great design. But that will give me my quick sewing fix. And then I can say, okay, now I'm going to slow down and I'm going to do some fitting and do some more pattern work to get the thing to fit. And I just need to keep that in my head. So that's just a me thing. One thing I've always wanted to try that I've never ever done is a Hong Kong seam finish. So if you're not familiar with a Hong Kong seam finish, it is basically using bias binding to finish the seams. And this is something that it's very, I won't say it's necessarily just exclusively couture, but you aren't going to see it in a lot of ready to wear clothing. It is going to be more of a high end, more expensive clothing finish. It used to be more prevalent than it is now. So I don't even know if that's something that I haven't seen it forever, let's put it that way, but it looks really cool. So if you, for example, have a jacket that's not lined and you want those seam finishes to look really, really sharp, it's fun to do like a Hong Kong seam finish on the inside so that when you take off the jacket, like all the seams are perfectly finished. And the fun thing to do is to do it in like a kind of complementary or contrasting fabric or print, and it makes it really fun. So back in the way back days, like I was back in law school, I bought a jacket at Mango when I was overseas, and it was a red, like twill cotton blazer. It was super cute. And then the Hong Kong seam finish, which I know it's crazy. Like, I don't know how this is before they were super fast fashion. But anyway, it had like a red and white striped Hong Kong seam finish on the inside of that jacket, which I just thought was like super awesome. And anyway, so that's one thing I want to try. I also know I need to work on some buttonholes. So it's one of those things that it's um it's one of those things that would be really fun, and I'd like to try it out. Buttonholes are something that I've been avoiding because I just and it's not like a lot of people left comments on the video like, "Oh, you just set up your machine." It's not just that. It's getting the buttonhole in the right spot, in the right spacing, in the right not cutting the buttonhole by accident when you open it, because I've done that too. It's a whole bunch of things. And it largely goes back to learning to sew in college when I couldn't, when I was being graded on my learning curve. And sometimes it's one of those things that was really hard um, to deal with because I started my fashion program with incredible enthusiasm and design ideas because I've always drawn little clothes and things like that. And so I was very enthusiastic, but I really, let's face it, I didn't know how to sew at all. Like, I had to learn to thread a sewing machine while I was in class. And but I was still enthusiastic and happy and excited about doing this. And then you started getting graded on things. And so I think that's where my mental block comes in, is that, if you learn to sew and you're just doing it for fun, and maybe your mom or your grandma or someone teaches you, or you aren't being graded on it, you probably don't have the same block that I have. So, yeah, that's kind of me. So let's see. Patty asked, does a Hong Kong seam finish require more fabric? it requires a bias binding. So if you're going to make it out of the same fabric, um, yes. If you're going to make it out of a complementary different fabric, then you'd need fabric. If you're going to make the bias binding by hand, if you're going to just buy packaged bias binding, then that's what you would need to get. So let's see. Um, so let's see. Jan is watching from Houston. So glad you're here, Jan. Thanks for watching. Um, let's see. La 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 la. I know a lot of people don't want to do resolutions. I try them. I think a lot of people do. I think it's kind of what you do at the beginning of the year. Um, I think this year we're going to do something different. Like instead of trying to keep resolutions, we're just going to try to do more sewing and do more new things. So I think that would be a lot of fun. And I'm glad y'all are all here. So if anybody has any thoughts about that topic in particular, I would love to know. Let me know in the comments. Like, what is one thing that you would like to try that you haven't ever tried before, as far as sewing goes? Because I'd like to know that. But Makey says that you're glad to be home. Thank you, Makey. I'm so glad you're back. Um, Tired, hoping to do some sewing in very small doses, just simple sewing. That sounds great. Very manageable. I do hand sewing when I don't feel like doing like a whole project. Like I have like these little embroidery projects that I do, and they're not great because I'm not great at embroidery, but I find that they improve my needle skills, and that's a lot of fun. Okay, Sandy's saying she wants to try a front zipper, a front fly zipper. I do too. I'm gonna be taking a jeans course and in Louisville in April, and that's going to be part of it. And I have never sewn one of those before. Let's see. Jean, hey Jean, thanks for joining us. Jean wants to figure out how to use a twin needle for a hem. You know, that's a really good one. I do not know how to use a twin needle at all. Someone emailed me and like, oh, could you just do this with a twin needle? I'm like, in theory, but I've never tried one. I have one for my machine. I'm really not sure where to put, how to get the thread lined up. I mean, I guess you could just run the thread, put it on both spools, both, you know, bobbin holders and or spool holders, and then just run it the same way. Does that work? I don't know. I've never tried it. So let me know, Jean. I'd like to know if it works. Let's see. So what else? Sorry, I'm trying to. Christina said she just, hold on. Like to try a jacket out of a quilt and using binding on the seams. That sounds very good. Uh, Ellen says she's going to start wearing your custom creations out. You don't wear them out already, Ellen? I feel like you should do that. Ellen has a sewing channel as well. It's at Your Sewing Bestie. So be sure to check it out. It's a lot of fun. She tries new things. Ellen is a new sewer, and I love everything you do, Ellen. You've got that fantastic enthusiasm that I used to have before I got graded. And you know, so yeah, this is one of those years where I just like, you know what, let's just try new things. That's what the theme of the year is going to be. And we'll see how it goes. So Sue is going to try lining a jacket. That sounds good. I tried lining a fleece vest, and it's still a work in progress because I cannot quite make it work. But yeah. So it's one of those things. So yeah, so things that stress me out a little bit are you know, it's not just fear of failure, it's fear of failure on camera. I'm sure if you have a YouTube channel like Nancy and Ellen do, and Zelda, when you watch the replay, Zelda, because I'm sure you're running around or doing something with grandkids this morning, you got to, you know, it's a different level of stress in addition to that sort of thing. So I just need to get over it because that's how we all learn. Everybody makes mistakes. And if I make a mistake on camera, I mean, like if it's sewing a seam or something like that, which I do all the time, that's not a big deal. But it's really like putting in a um a buttonhole and totally screwing that up on camera, you know. Um so that's kind of the thing. As far as fitting, that's another really big one because one thing I've realized with fitting is that I can know in theory how it works in my head, but then once you actually come into practice, it takes a lot more steps than you think it does. And, I've done fitting with my friend Jen and my other friend Heather, and it never goes quite as smoothly as you think because it's this whole process. And it's like bodies are three-dimensional. And when you read something in a book, it's all flat and it's like, yeah, it's gonna fit a body, but it's a little bit different. So, um, let's see. Uh, Bonnie asked if we'll be doing more group outings like the museum and Move Fabrics. Wanted to go, couldn't make it this time. Would love to in the future. Oh, you're down in Lampasas. Okay. Yes, Bonnie, I'm kind of thinking about trying new things. Doing some more in-person events. Not just teaching stuff either, though, because I am going to do some workshops and fit classes and things like that this year. But I'm also thinking more of like maybe like a get together, let's have lunch and go shopping at Mood Fabrics kind of event, where it's just going to be meeting other people in the area who sew and hanging out and doing some fun things like that. I think that's just a way to build more community. They have American Sewing Guild meetings in the area and things like that. But for me personally, I think the one that is on a Saturday is like the same time I do my live stream. So it's not really convenient for me. And a lot of the other ones are during the week when I'm working. So, I don't know how many people are not able to participate in those kind of events because, they've got jobs still and it's not just a whole, group of women who are retired and have the ability to have a more flexible schedule than somebody who has to be at work and clock in at certain days, you know? So, okay, let's see. Mary has a comment on Hong Kong finishes. Common way back because fabrics raveled and seams needed protection, then became a fashion design of quality. My mother was a seamstress. Yes, I know that my grandma loved Hong Kong seam finishes. And, that was before everybody had sergers. I mean, I think that was before sergers. I don't know when the serger was invented, so I'm not going to pretend like I do. But, sergers have made an easy seam finish that you don't have to worry about raveling or anything like that. I just think the Hong Kong seam finish looks really fancy and I think it's cool. And I've never made my own bias binding either. I don't quilt. And so I know a lot of quilters do that. I remember in college, we learned how to make bias binding and we were all like, why are we doing this? Like, what are we going to use this for? And it's like, well, if you need to do like a bias face neck, and we were all like, we'll just go to the store and buy it, which is not really the case anymore because there are a lot fewer fabric stores, as we all know, after the events of last year. And, you'd have to sit down and order, bias binding online and then figure out what size and if the color matches and everything else. So let's see. Sue said, remember when you make a mistake, we all learn. Thanks. Yes, when I make mistakes, everybody learns. So there will be a lot of learning this year, undoubtedly, because I am not a perfect sewer. I never have been. Sometimes I get things right the first time. Like, for example, and I mentioned this last in the video last week, but let me go into a little bit more detail here. I learned to sew and I was learning to sew in one class and learning to make patterns in another class. And in my pattern making class, which was actually a draping class, you drape your idea and your design in muslin on a dress form, and then you had to make patterns off of the um, muslin. And my muslin at the bottom was always, it was never even, and sometimes it tapered in, and it just was a mess because I didn't know it needed to be more accurate. And so then when I trace everything off, like inevitably I'd forget about it. And so my pieces, the seams of my pieces never matched up because I didn't do that in the muslin stage. And so as a result, when I sewed that first seam, like it never matched up at the bottom. So here's a tip. if you start sewing from the top of a seam of any garment, if somehow you have stretched out your fabric, or if it's not quite on grain perfectly, or if your pattern piece slipped while you were cutting it out and one end is longer than the other, you can fix that in the hem. So that's the sneaky thing, is that, so that's how I always sew. I always sew from the top of the seam down to the bottom towards the hem, and that way if it's not even, I can even it out at the end. And this is based on my personal poor draping and pattern making skills. So when I so now when I'm sewing a commercial pattern, I am always really excited when I get to the bottom of that seam and both sides of that pattern piece match up, which is because, it just means that, oh, I cut it out exactly right and I didn't mess that up. But, it's one of those things that, um, it just makes me happy. And so you got to celebrate those small wins. When if you get that dart sewn in perfectly and it doesn't pucker, and it's in the right spot, you didn't, accidentally like not get it even, which happens to all of us. Sometimes you can't see those lines where you want to sew. Um, but those little tiny wins always are a good thing to celebrate, to help boost your confidence as you're going through this new trying and learning and figuring it out process. Okay, let's see. Ellen said that a group trip to Garment District in New York City with a Broadway play. That was your daughter's suggestion. Yes, that is a good idea. Eventually, I still have a full-time job, and so my boss will not be down with that. Me going that long, in addition to everything else that I have. But yes, that is, Ellen, you have mentioned that. I think Jean has mentioned that in emails. We email it back and forth, that would be a fun thing to do. I agree 100%. And that will be a future thing. And we'll see when it happens, but definitely fun. Okay, Mary says, I believe having the time to put into sew slowing makes a big difference as well. Yes, people talk about like slow sewing versus fast sewing. And, I remember I was watching I think she was a Gen Z YouTuber, talking about how fast sewing is fast fashion, which I do not agree with, because my fast sewing is still higher quality, using better fabric and, much better sewing than the fast fashion that's on Shein or Temu. So I don't agree with that at all. But I think that sometimes it's fun to sew slow, and sometimes it's fun to, make a dress in a day because you're planning on wearing it out that night. So something to keep in. Trisha said that she likes to make her own bias binding because she hates the plastic feel of store-bought. Yeah, and the store-bought, it always feels kind of funky, but sometimes I just don't want to. I mean, let's not pretend I've done this before. I have not. I have not made my own bias binding. I just never really want to take the time to figure out how to do it right. Lynn is watching from South Carolina. Hello. And let's see. Working on fit and learning how to sew different fabrics. I want my work to look cleaner and more handmade. Yes. Um, you know, I think that um, there is definitely I want this bespoke custom clothing look, as opposed to either fast fashion, which I think we can all agree is garbage, or like, that home ec I tried, but it didn't quite work out and I made a C- on this project. So there is a fine line between those things and having that custom clothing. And let's face it, that's why we sew, right? We sew because we want to have clothes that fit us and fabrics we love, and the uniqueness of creating that thing that nobody else is going to be wearing. Because when you wear that fabulous thing that nobody else has, be it a jacket or a dress or a new skirt or pants, if you're good at pants, congrats. Um, and then having someone you don't know be like, "Oh, that's a fabulous jacket. Where did you get it?" And you can be like, "Thanks, I made it." And I still love that. I was in court on Friday wearing a skirt I made, and the judge was like, "Tony, that is a great skirt." I'm like, "Thanks, I made it." And she's like, "Of course you did." it's too good to you have not made it. She's like, I can't find anything like that in the store. And it's like, yep, very, very true. You cannot find things in the store like the quality that you take the time to sew. And whether you're, sewing it quickly or sewing it with, you know, slow and getting it right and taking your time and doing, the fit and the muslin and then, working it out and then going back to the fashion fabric. It's going to be better quality. Like I've said this before, I don't know what happened to clothes post pandemic. It's like all of a sudden with the rise of fast fashion, it feels like all the clothing manufacturers just decided that nobody needed nice fabric anymore. And for some reason, cotton became a luxury fiber, which is weird because you're like, it's just cotton. It's not silk. It's not cashmere. It's just cotton. It's not a luxury fabric. Like throughout history, this has been a fabric that everybody wears. It is an all inclusive, you know, fabric for the people kind of fabric. And now everything is, polyester and nylon and yucky, gross feeling fabrics. I do not shop at stores. I am wearing all the clothes that I bought pre pandemic. And thankfully, they were well made and they're all holding up because every time I go to the store to buy something, I'll start touching different fabrics and I'm like, this is horrible. It's really horrible. So, I think that's the reason to sew is because you're getting better quality fabric. And yes, fabric costs money. But if you want something that's going to last and you want to create something that's going to, express your individual style and um, you know, fit you well and reflect your personality and be in the colors you like and not necessarily the color that's in season, then, you sewing is the only way to achieve that. Let's see what Trisha says. Trisha said, appreciate makers who show us their challenges are much more relatable, appreciating hearing their thoughts and process for solving the problem. Yes. Well, you get that a lot here because I am not a perfect sewer ever. So, I try. Doris is watching from Switzerland. Hello, Doris. Thank you for watching. Um, so I think it's a whole thing of making the effort to try to make more interesting things, which is something I would like to do. Um, I tend to make things that aren't complicated. But I think that I can push myself and still have the classic kind of style clothing that I like that is not going to be um, it necessarily complicated, but then push myself and try some new skills like, like I've said. Definitely the fitting is a big one because it's going to help you all learn how to fit and seeing how I fit and seeing the process that I go through. And then I think also just getting out of my comfort zone and sharing what I know and that sort of thing. So, um let me know what you think so far. I mean, how many I have done I need a sip of coffee. Hold on. I have done some polls and asked people how they feel about things, and it seems like most of you say that your big challenges are fitting and fabric, and either choosing the right fabric for the design or, um, you know, understanding fabric online or things like that. Getting a fabric that doesn't act the way you think it's going to act and all that kind of stuff. And it's the good news is these are two things I'm pretty good at. So, but I did want to share before we're at 10:30, we're at the halfway mark at this point. I did want to share some of my plans and ideas of new things to try and kind of ideas I'm working through as we move in. We're already in the middle of January. Can you believe it? Like the last 2 weeks at work have been insane. Like all the officers at court have been showing up and we've been like double, triple dockets. So courtrooms have been packed and it's been like running, running, running. And then I look at the clock, I'm like, wait, how is it 11 already? So I have not done any sewing. I have spent a little bit of time here in So Lounge tidying up. It is not finished by any stretch of the imagination. And so I hope that you have had better luck getting into your sewing room at the beginning of the year to start maybe some new projects or finish up some old ones. And I just thought I'd share kind of what my idea is moving forward, in addition to the trying new things. I really feel like I need to get some of my old projects finished. And, you know, at the end of last year, I was feeling very, very exhausted and worn out. And I was like, I'm just going to finish one project before the end of the year. And literally nothing I sat down to sew was working. It was just a challenge. So I didn't finish my denim dress. I didn't finish my kimono. I, it was a whole bunch of things that I was like, really, I just want to finish one. It was just fighting. And I said, you know what, I'm done. So I stopped sewing in November. I said, I'm going to take December off. I'm going to regroup. I'm going to come up with some new ideas, look at next year a little bit differently, and go from there. So without further ado, one thing I am going to get finished, the denim dress. This has been hanging around since my honeymoon projects from 2024. So I cut out this dress back in September of 24. I have made some progress. It still needs a front placket. It needs the collar, and it needs buttons down the front. Now, I am usually looking into workarounds for buttons, but in this case, I cannot find any buttons that I like that go with the denim and the look. And it's a super cute dress. I've been doing some top stitching on it, so it looks more like jeans, and it looks very Western than if this dress wasn't. And I gotta do the top stitching down this front placket. Um, and so I was thinking, like, I want it to look very Western. This is something I want to take out to, West Texas the next time we go. And if we go out somewhere, I wanted to wear it. So I'm going with pearl snaps down the front in lieu of buttons, because I cannot find any buttons that I think go with the vibe of this. So that's one thing. The other thing I want to get finished, which has been hanging out for a very long time, is this Simplicity kimono jacket. Now, if you remember from last year, I had tried to sew this with the bands in the same color as the fabric, and it was looking awful. And so I went to Mood. I found a new fabric, which is here. I'm going to grab it real quick. This fabric to go on the bands of the jacket, and then it matches the blue in the pattern of the red fabric. So let me just grab that because it's in the closet right here. So if you don't remember, this is the kimono jacket. The bands go here on the front, and then they also go on the bottom of the sleeve here. And this blue matches perfectly with the blue that's already in the jacket. So the bands are going to be this, and then the main base of the jacket will be this. And so that had been on hold because I do not have any interfacing. And Mood had not gotten their interfacing in yet. And so now that they have, I can go get that and get that project finished. The thing I realized, though, is that I had already trimmed the seam. So the base of the jacket probably has a 3/8 inch seam. And when I cut the new, band, I need to reduce that so that I can just sew it at 3/8 of an inch and not have a 5/8 inch seam on the band and a 3/8 inch seam on the jacket, because that's going to cause more problems. But hopefully, because I am reducing that seam, it will make it a lot easier to get it around the curve of the neckline, because that was a huge problem I was having with the original, in that wider, larger seam allowance was really hard to get in where it needed to be, and it was puckering and causing all kinds of problems. So okay, so Jean said she can't see the pattern. So this is the pattern. And if you're watching online, this is the pattern, vertical. This is the pattern for the kimono. And then if you're watching, this is the pattern on the denim dress. So, so those are things I want to do. Now, in the past, I've said, like, oh, I'm just going to do all these things and do it all at the same time. I'm going to say, let's try one a month. If I can get one old project finished a month, I'm going to consider that a win. And, some people have made the comment that, like, oh, I don't have that problem. Like, I finish what I sew, which is great if you're great at sewing and you don't ever have problems. But inevitably, I run into a problem. And then that's when I don't want to sew that thing anymore. Um, so it's one of those things that I like with the denim dress, I was like, "Oh, I need to make buttonholes. Can't find buttons I like." I just put it down. It's like with the kimono jacket, the band wasn't working. I didn't like the way the fabric was looking. I couldn't find any fabric that matched at the time. And I went to Joann's multiple times, and I went to my friend's quilt shop, and I couldn't find fabric that I liked. So I just put it aside. And I'm glad I did, because now it's going to be really awesome, because I found like the perfect fabric for the bands on the kimono jacket. And now I decided to do pearl snaps instead of buttons on the denim dress, and it's going to make it better. So sometimes putting that unfinished project, or the project that's causing problems, aside and letting it rest for a little while is the better option, because um then you can come back later with fresh eyes and maybe figure out, number one, what your mistake was, or what the problem you couldn't get past was, because you haven't been fighting with it for, like, hours on end. And then, it also, sometimes you just have to kind of think about it, and then a new option will present itself, which is what happened in the case of these two garments. So let's see what people are saying. Gorgeous fabric. Susan said she retired at the end of October. Congrats. My friend is calling it graduating, because she's like, retirement sounds like I'm old, and I'm not old. And she's like, I'm only 65. And she's like, I'm graduating to a new stage of life. I've spent the last 2.5 months going through patterns and fabric, removed all patterns I'm not making this session of life. That's awesome. That is awesome. Um, let's see. Um, so, Jean, I hope you could see those patterns. I tried to hold them up. I will hold them in front of my face next time, so then you can see them. Let's see. Let's see. Uh, Love to make a beautiful lightweight linen skirt or longer blouse in white with a Spanish hem. That style is beautiful. Carrie, that sounds like a great idea. Um, Patty's saying she can relate to my getting discouraged when things don't go well. I agree. Yeah. Hey, Jeannie, thanks for popping on. One a month is doable. I agree. So I think that, like, let's not try and do all the things at once. Don't stress yourself out trying to fix all the old projects in one sitting. Like, I've seen other YouTubers do it, and they're great at it. And that's fantastic when you like revisit past mistakes and make a whole video about it, and it's inspiring. But when I try and do that, it really just adds this extra layer of pressure that I don't need in my life. And trust me, I have other projects. I could probably fix an old project a month this year, and still have something to do by the end of the year. It's totally possible. I don't know if I have 12. I'm thinking if I have 12. I know I have at least 8 things that are not completely finished that need to be finished, or I have a couple that need to be redone. So we'll see how it pans out this year. But I'm not going to be um I'm not going to be stressing out about that kind of stuff. So then the other thing I was thinking about is, let's try some more um indie patterns. Like, maybe that would be fun. I don't know if you're feeling what I'm feeling when I look at all the new stuff um, from the Big Four pattern company. I mean, it's just simplicity.com now, but I think we could still call it the Big Four. It's reorganized into its usual boring, not exciting kind of patterns. Um, I'm not super excited about anything. I have a lot of Big Four patterns from years past, and vintage patterns and things like that. And it's one of those things that I'm kind of like, maybe I have enough. Maybe we don't need to keep supporting the Big Four pattern companies, because aren't really creating anything that's that exceptional or different. And it's a lot of the same stuff over and over again with maybe they change a collar, maybe they change a sleeve. And let me know if you're feeling that, because um, I am thinking that too. Like I'm thinking, maybe not. Maybe let's not do this. So one of the patterns that I am looking at is just for Eugene, this Friday Pattern Company jacket. This is the Ilford jacket. I like the way it looks. I think it's super cute. And there you go. I had some twill fabric that I got as a sample, and I washed it and it shrunk and it pilled and I don't like it anymore. So I'm glad that I did not move forward with that. But I really like the pattern still. So I think this is something I would like to make. It is going to need some alterations because I'm pretty sure it's going to be too tight across my back and in the shoulders. And so I'm going to need to do a few adjustments. Another pattern that is an indie pattern that I am going to make this year is going to be this reed skirt from Grainline Studio. I really like Grainline Studio patterns. I have made 2 of them now. I made a tunic top, which I thought was a dress, but it was a top. And then I have also made a dress, the Pharaoh dress. I can't remember what the name of the top was, but it was the tunic. And they have really great instructions, and everything comes out, like it all comes out well. So let's see. Patty is asking what an indie pattern is. An indie pattern is from an independent pattern company. So Grainline Studio, they make, they design, they print their own patterns. Same with Friday Pattern Company. So these are both independent pattern companies that, I think we should start supporting, because here's the reality. This is what's coming. The reason the big 4 patterns were all so cheap was because Joann's was forcing that price on the pattern companies. And Joann's basically got people to believe that that's what patterns were worth, okay? Which, let's face it, their designs weren't always great, but if you could pick up a Vogue pattern for, $4.99 or $5.99 instead of the $25 or $30 that they cost, it was a good thing. So, now that it's its own company and it's simplicity.com and it's all one company that's only making patterns, the prices are all going up, because if you go check things out, when the patterns are on sale, they're around $8, $7.99, $8.99. And that's getting ready to be the new norm. And this is coming from, people who know. And, as I've mentioned, I am a CSI with the Palmer Pletch fit system. And in our last meeting, that's what Patty was talking about, how the patterns are going to be around that price when they are on sale, and when they are full price, they are going to be in the, $17, $18 range. And so when you look at that, and then you think about, well, I could buy independent patterns for around that same price. I personally would rather support an independent pattern company that is creating more interesting designs. They also tend to have a more size inclusive range. And, I'd personally rather do that. And so I'm going to be sewing some more of those patterns this coming year, because they cost more money. I want to trace them off, and then I want to do fitting. And so, that's something I think is important. And let's see. So Sue is asking where you find indie patterns. So you can just Google indie patterns. There are some that I like. Grainline Studio is one of them. I have never sewn Friday Pattern Company patterns, but I like them. They all have websites. They all have email lists you can sign up, and then they'll feature different patterns. A lot of them have sew-alongs to go with it. Sew House 7 is another one that I like. I have a lot of their patterns that I would like to make. This is another one. This is Liesel & Co. Um, and this is the Antwerp pullover that I would like to make, and I need to get some fabric for it at this point. But I just think that, there are a lot of different patterns that companies that you can support that are going to be in the price range that the new simplicity patterns are all going to be in. And I think you're going to find a lot more interesting designs, and then you're also supporting a small business, which I think, with the way things are going in the sewing industry, and the closure of Joann's, the big four pattern companies, like, the whole bankruptcy scare, and then now the whole reorganization of that. I think that if we want to keep sewing alive and going, we need to start supporting the independent designers. We need to support the small independent fabric shops. You need to go where you can to buy fabric locally. And if you can't find fabric locally, or if all your only option is like a quilt shop, and you're like, I'm tired of sewing broadcloth, um, go online and then support, the businesses that you like, and keep them viable, because it's totally different here in the States than it is in Europe. Like, the sewing industry in Europe is different. It's just, they have sewing magazines, they have, lots of fabric stores, they have more accessibility to patterns. I mean, like, it's a whole different experience when you go over there and go shopping than what we have here. And it's probably also because, this is a huge country, it is very spread out. And, a lot of people live in cities. And, I'm in Houston, I'm in the fourth largest city in the US. And the fabric shopping options are very limited. And they were extremely limited after high fashion closed. You pretty much just had Joann's. Now that Mood has opened, that has opened up more options for good quality, interesting fabrics that you can just go and, find things that you're looking for. So if you want a wool suiting, they have wool suiting. If you want a silk charmeuse, they have silk charmeuse. So it's one of those things that, it's we have to make the effort to go out and do this, and, keep it going here in the States, and, get some of the younger people into it. I know that there are a lot of younger, Gen Z aged YouTubers who are promoting sewing, and that's fantastic. And I think we need to just, keep moving forward, but support your local stores when you can. And let's see who is Joyce is watching from Oklahoma. Hey Joyce. Nancy's saying she she loves Love Notion. I have never used their patterns. Cashmerette does curvy and plus size patterns. Yes, I have seen that. Let's see. Somewhere Vanessa said, I missed it. Oh, uh, Kim's saying she agrees with Vanessa. Been buying tons of vintage patterns on eBay and Etsy. Yes. Here's Vanessa's original comment. Local thrift core stores in Hudson. New patterns are coming out, have no detail. They're boring. Yes, 100%. They are very boring. I was looking at the new, like, oh, like, so are new patterns. And, Simplicity's been sending a lot of like new sewing resolutions, sewing goals, emails since the start of the year, and, showing a lot of their patterns. And it's just not interesting, and that's why I'm saying, like, let's go check out some independent patterns. Lynn's saying she loves Love Notions and Pattern Emporium. She also has Friday Pattern Company, Chalk and Notch too. So those are all some suggestions from other viewers who are hanging out here with all of us today. It's one of those things that, it's what your comfort zone is. They do have different levels of sewing. So if you want an easy pattern, they have easier patterns, they have more complicated patterns. And, if you have found that, the big four pattern companies is not size inclusive for your body type, then you definitely want to go check out some of the independent pattern companies, because I know that somebody commented on one of my videos that Grainline Studio wasn't super size inclusive. This pattern does only go up to a size 18, but there are lots of other pattern companies out there. So, do some homework, start with one, and then I'm sure Google will suggest some more to you. And if you just type in independent pattern companies, that's going to be the way to do it. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I do have some fabric that I bought at Mood at the end of last year that I do want to make into some garments this year. So we'll be working on that. Now we'll be using some of my standard big four patterns. But I have a bunch of indie patterns that I have fabric for that, I bought the pattern, and I've got this Sew House 7 pattern, and then I found the same color, like peacock blue linen, that it looks like they made the sample from on the pattern. So I am dying to use my fabric to make that, to recreate that dress. So that will probably happen this year. And then it's going to be fun. We'll try new things and see how it goes. Let's see what Kay's saying. Kay's saying, haven't really bought from Big 4 or 5 much, but since they're trying to keep going, I feel like I should try and support that. $8 or $9 on sale isn't bad. It isn't, but the patterns are boring. There are a couple of Vogue evening wear patterns that if I had a fancy wedding to go to, which, if my husband's niece gets engaged, it will be like a New York City super formal wedding. I'd consider buying one of those patterns to make that kind of a dress. But for the most part, I think most of their, regular Simplicity and McCall's, it's just boring. Now, I will say this. If you're going to be getting into the Palmer Pletch fit system, then the Palmer Pletch patterns on that are under the Butterick label, that's the pattern you need to use for that system, because it's going to help you learn the system, because all of the markings for the various alterations are already printed on the patterns. So, that's one thing to keep in mind. Those are patterns that if you are doing that and you are more interested in getting into that fitting method, that's the way to do it, because it's going to be a lot easier than trying to mark everything yourself on a pattern that doesn't have those guidelines to be able to do the alterations a little bit easier. Once you get the hang of it, then, great. You can do it on any pattern, whether it's an independent pattern or another Big 4 pattern that doesn't have those markings. It's totally up to you. But if you're getting started and you want to try out the system, then I definitely recommend buying those patterns. So that would be something to keep an eye on if Butterick patterns go on sale, because that's what they're under now. They do have older patterns that you might be able to find on Etsy. I just have some because I bought them that are under the McCall's label. They're the same patterns, they're just a different printing. So that's just something to consider. So let's see. Christina's saying she likes Ellie and Mac patterns. I've never tried those. So that would be something to consider. So, and then Trisha's saying she found Style Falcon last year and that they have patterns for more mature bodies that have experienced gravity. You haven't tried them yet. Okay. Joyce is saying, I'm so jealous you have a Mood in your area. So here's the good news. If you have not heard, Mood is going to be opening in Atlanta, Georgia, and Chicago, Illinois in 2026. So if you do not follow them on Instagram, you probably should. That is where they make announcements about these kind of things. So if you're in Chicago or Atlanta, that's going to be coming in this coming year. I'm not sure when exactly. So it just keep an eye on it, that was some things that they added. They have also updated their website. I have not tried the new website yet because it literally just happened in December, and I just haven't looked at it. But so yeah, just so you know, that's, if you're in those areas, it's going to it's definitely something to keep an eye on. So yeah, Mood is it's an experience. So if you are interested in doing that, then come on. If you're in Houston going shopping at Mood, shoot me an email and I'll come meet you there. Cause like I said, it's about 20 minutes from my house. So yeah, Kim's excited. Yeah. Chicago. Yeah, it is. So if you're up in that area, that's where it's going. Um, I don't know if they're going to open any other store. Those are the two for next year. So, um, you know, see how it goes, but it's exciting. And let's see. Trisha said she lives in Chicago and is going to Atlanta in August. Yeah, so I'm not sure when it's opening, but um check it out for sure. Let's see. Betty, oops, sorry, Betty. Betty's saying I'm petite, perfected altering my pattern pieces for a petite figure before cutting it out and make a couple more adjustments. Awesome. That's fantastic. That makes all the difference. Um, so Mood Miami has Liberty fabrics. They have them here too. And let me tell you, like sometimes they're like on a wall where all the Liberty fabrics are, like just on display. And so then you can see that they're Liberty. But then I was going through, they have all the cotton fabrics in one like area, but it's all kinds of things. So it's lawn, it's fall, it's you know sateen. It's like all the cotton fabrics are all mixed in on bolts, and inevitably I will find the Liberty one and be like, this is Tana lawn, and pull it out and be like, oh, I love this. But yeah, they have it here too. So um it's exciting. So let's see. Kimberly's saying, love doing French seams, wanting to get reacquainted with my serger, conquered buttonholes last summer and setting in sleeves. Awesome. And this is the year for installing a zipper. Yes. Um, it is very it is very satisfying to put in a good zipper. I don't know if any of y'all follow Laurel Hoffman. She has a YouTube channel. She was like in the industry and she taught at, I don't remember what school, but she taught sewing and design and stuff like that. And so she's a riot if you check out her channel because she's just really entertaining. Um, she has a lot of recent shorts on putting in zippers. So I'm interested in maybe getting her zipper book and seeing how she puts in zippers because I'm good at a front separating zipper that would be in like a fleece jacket because I made a bunch of those for grandma and, got the hang of it. And then I am good at an invisible zipper. So, but like the center front zipper, never really perfected that. I think I made one in class because I had to, and that worked out. So it's Laurel, like the tree. So it's Laurel Hoffman, Hoffman. And if you, it's her channel is just her name. She's a riot. Um, so so yeah, but so that's one thing I'm thinking about getting her zipper book. It's like her books are crazy expensive. I'm assuming because they're small printing batches, but yeah, they're expensive. I think like just the zipper book, which I think is less than 200 pages, is like $45. And then the one that's like her more inclusive, like all types of sewing kind of book is like, I want to say it's like over $100. So, I might check those out, business expensive, but we'll see. But they are expensive. So and you can't get them on Amazon. You can only get them on Barnes and Noble, which I also think is kind of funny, but or from her website. So I'm going to see what's happening. But I'm interested in her zipper method. So, because I can't really figure it out. The shorts are too short. But it looks, let's see, Pixel Kitty's saying it's $151. Yeah, it's expensive. Like I'm telling you, it's crazy. So, but I might do that. We'll see. We'll see how the year progresses and how things go. But it's a fun channel. So go check it out because she's a riot. She was talking about like seam allowances on commercial patterns being too big, and that's why you can't, it's such a hard time putting on a collar and that they need to be reduced. And it's fascinating stuff. Like I like to learn from her because she's been in the industry and she talks about how things are done in the industry versus home sewing and how you can make your sewing better using some of the techniques. And she's just really fun. And so Joyce wants to try bound buttonholes. Yeah, me too. Grandma always said she'd teach me, and then that didn't ever pan out. Yeah, Lynn's saying him into that. So we'll see if that happens. I don't know if I can learn to make bound buttonholes without crying at this point. So that may be a next year kind of thing. I'm just going to focus on regular buttonholes this year and getting those down and being more comfortable putting those into more garments than not. Um, let's see. Sui is just joining us. Hope to empty your fabric stash a bit. Bought too much in 2025. Only want to buy new fabrics if the stash is clear. Hello, thank you for joining us from the Netherlands. I just don't do that. Yeah, people are in the comments. It's going that $151 is I can buy a lot of fabric with that. Yes, you can. I think my last trip to Mood, and I bought 3 different fabrics, was less than $151. Which, number one, I felt like I was winning, but yeah, that's an expensive book. So we'll see. But I might take the hit on that financially to be able to share that information with you, because if it really is a better way to sew a zipper, I would really like to know how to do it. Because like I said, I'm limited to front separating zippers and invisible zippers. And sometimes you need to put in a side zipper with that little flap over it. And I did one of those once in college. Did I do that? Oh no, I did the one that has the double flap over the zipper to cover the zipper in college, and it looked really, really good. But I did it on the side seam, and that zipper only goes on the center back seam. And on the side seam, it only has a flap on one side from the front to the back. And so I did not get a good grade, even though I did a really good zipper, because that's how our professors were at the University of Texas at Austin. And they were, you know, not really, not really helpful. Lynn's saying if you've made welt pockets. Lynn, I have not made welt pockets. So that is part of it. Let's see. Oh, Amanda said she bought 2 of her books. Very detailed, more like textbooks. I found them to be very valuable and worth it. And that might be one of the reasons why they're that much money, because um she does teach, and so maybe it's like this is her curriculum, and kids would go to the college bookstore and buy these books, and that's why they cost that much. I do have textbooks from college. Like, I never got rid of any of my books, and they were expensive. So I think if we maybe think of it in that context of like, it is a textbook we're going to go through step by step, um you know and look at it differently. um so Christine is saying, can you borrow the book from the library? The Houston Public Library is not great. Their system is really strange in that you can't always, like, it'll say they have a book, but then you can't find it. You have to like order it and then go pick it up somewhere. And for some reason, you can't sign up for a library card online. Like, you have to actually go to a library. And so I also, as far as sewing books go, I have an extensive personal library, and I'm always looking to add to that. Historically, I have not been great with returning library books on time. I am one of those kids. I would just keep reading the book, and then, it's now 2 weeks late, and then it's 3 weeks late. And as an adult, I don't need to deal with that anxiety. So I'd rather just buy it personally. Hi, Rena. Thanks for joining. Let's see. Lori says she's made welt pockets. Didn't make them correctly, but they look fine. Not excellent, but they look right. As long as they look right, nobody's going to know except you. That's the other trick about sewing. Nobody's going to look at the inside of it except you. And if it looks good from the outside, that's a lot of what really counts. And I have that book, Lynn. I have the Couture Sewing Techniques by Claire Schaefer. Yeah, it's a good book. It is, but it doesn't go into zippers, because I think it has a hand sewn zipper, which I'm not going to do, just because I don't want to. Not because I can't, because I don't want to. I don't want to do a hand pick zipper. That just seems like entirely too much work. So Well, we are coming up on it's 11:09. I just want to remind everyone if you've just joined, there is a Louvre Couture event with Mood Fabrics and me here in Houston next Saturday. It's from about 11 to 5, or as long as you want to stay at Mood. They close at 5, so that's why I made that the end time. If you um, want to um, check that out, it's in the link in the description below. Um, Also, I don't think I mentioned this. Let me mention this really quickly. I am reading the coolest book ever. If you like reading about sewing and fashion designer and history, it is called Claire McCardell, The Woman Who Set Women Free. And it is about the birth of the American fashion scene and how American fashion differed from French fashion with starting just before World War II, but then while France was basically in lockdown because of the war, and how the American fashion industry developed and changed, and how Claire McCardell basically revolutionized the way that women dress and what they she put it this way. She came up with all of these ideas that we consider common now. Pockets in clothing for women, separates was her idea. Ballet flats. It is a fascinating read. It's making me inspired to try to sew some more, I guess, kind of separate pieces. Do maybe like they call it a capsule wardrobe now, but it's the same idea of separates that you can mix and match and wear a variety of outfits in. Um, and she initially came up with that idea for the purposes of travel because steamship travel at the time, you take these huge trunks and they were hard to deal with and heavy and a pain. And so that's when she kind of came up with that idea, and it took almost 5 years for it to catch on, um, and for her manufacturer to actually be like, okay, let's try this. And it's just a fascinating, interesting book. It is, there's like, original source material from her letters, and the way it's written is just absolutely riveting and fascinating. And so it's kind of inspired me to want to sew some separates and kind of have more options of things to wear, and mix into my regular wardrobe, because I tend to wear a lot of dresses. Like, I make a lot of dresses because I like making dresses because you can just put it on and go, when I go out. But in my day-to-day life, I do not tend to wear a whole lot of what I sew. I do wear some of the jackets I've made on Fridays for like casual Friday at court, and then the skirts that I have that I wear with a suit jacket. But I thought it would be fun to kind of mix that in, that idea of adding some more separates to my wardrobe to be able to wear them in more day-to-day kind of things. And then one thing I did not mention is that I will be taking on um, the black t-shirt project, and making my own black t-shirt. This is Banana Republic. Um, I will be trying to copy it or find a pattern that is similar. So that'll be something else coming this year. Let's see. Uh, let's see. Da, 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 da. Kay saying it sounds like American sportswear. It is. It's the development of it from the very beginning. Um, and it's fascinating. It's just a great book. So I put a link in the description below if you want to check that out. My mom, I always have a running list of books, so that when someone asks me like, well, what do you want for Christmas? I'm like, go buy me a book. And so my mom actually got this for me for Christmas, and I have been reading it. Patricia, it's in the link in the description below the video. It's Claire McCardell, the designer who set women free. But there's a link, so you can just click on it. It'll take you to Amazon. It just came out. My biggest regret is like reading this book and reading about the styles and the changes is that I did not have a chance to ever talk to grandma about this book, because the book came out on June 25th of this year. And then grandma passed away on July 19th. And from like the end of June, she wasn't doing really well cognitively. And so it was really hard to have a conversation with her, but the book wasn't on my radar yet. So as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, Oh gosh, I really would have liked to have asked her about this. But it's a fascinating read. So that's something to check out if you like reading those kind of books. I think it's great. Um, let's see. Carrie from South Carolina is saying she recommends Style Arc patterns. So that's another independent pattern company you can check out if you're interested. Hello from Puerto Rico, Range Chick checking in. And I think I'm going to wind this down for the morning. Thank you all for joining so much. And yeah, keep an eye out. We'll be doing this monthly. And you know, moving forward in 2026, trying new things. I hope you're going to try new things too. And if you want to stay up on the latest from So Lounge, there is a link in the description below. You can sign up for the newsletter, and I send out weekly emails. That's another thing I'm doing this year, but it's working so far, so fingers crossed. And you'll get an email the week before the live stream and a reminder email to come check it out and see how things are going and what's going on. You know, Ellen, thank you for joining. It was fun. I'm glad you're here. Um, and thanks everyone else. And I will see you next month. There'll be another video coming out next week. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but be sure to check that out. And I'll see you all soon. So have a fabulous rest of your Saturday. I'm going to go clean up the sewing room and, you know, start planning for next week's project. So bye.